Discover the amazing and inspiring secrets of Japanese mythology, 10 incredible tales revealed. The musty smell of old wood and forgotten memories filled the air as Nora rummaged through her late grandmother's attic, searching for sanctuary from the relentless pressures of her classroom. Hidden beneath cobwebs, she stumbled upon an intricately crafted book. Its spine cracked as she pulled it free, revealing tales woven with valor and resilience. Her heart raced as she scanned the pages. Could these ancient stories be the spark she desperately needed in her mundane classroom? She envisioned her students, so often lost in the haze of their phones, captivated by heroes overflowing with courage. Yet, another thought crept in: what if her dreams were just another empty wish? In the heart of a small Midwestern town, Nora felt invisible among the bustling school halls. The faculty gatherings droned on, each colleague barely recognizing her presence, their faces glued to their agendas, their minds racing toward the next standardized test. Certainly, she had fought to inspire, but self-doubt crept in like a shadow, whispering questions that gnawed at her resolve. What is the point of this? She often wondered. Am I truly making a difference? The tales of Japanese mythology resonated with an urgency she hadn't felt in years. They were mirrors reflecting her struggles and those of her students who wandered through school feeling unseen. But when she proposed this bold integration of myth into her curriculum, the resistance was immediate. Educational standards come first, the administration had declared, leaving her deflated and uncertain. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The daily grind of traditional pedagogy felt like quicksand, pulling her deeper into despair. But her resolve hardened when Jake, her former rival turned principal, began to inquire about her ideas. There was tension between them, competitive energy still crackled in the air. Yet, she noticed something different in Jake's gaze. He was intrigued by her passion. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. The walls around her ambition started to crack as she tested the waters, launching small discussions about resilience and bravery, but each breakthrough nudged an unsettling fear within. What if this was all in vain? As her enthusiastic lessons gathered a flicker of interest from a handful of students, the looming threat of tighter regulations weighed heavily on her heart. Each day, she battled with her dreams while trying to keep her head above water. Would they snuff out her spark? The anxiety churned in her stomach as the school board meeting approached. Could she articulate the importance of creativity in education without appearing deluded? Now, as the clock ticked down, anticipation gripped her tightly. Every moment felt precarious, a tightrope walk between hope and despair. Nora stood at the precipice of her career, with her passion painted across the canvas of her mind. Would she be brave enough to stand before the crowd and say what needed to be said? The room pulsated with doubt and hope, and the silence amplified her inner turmoil. Each question echoed louder in her ears. If she spoke up, would the board listen? Would she finally break through the shadows of conformity, or fade further into the void of unrecognized contributions? The struggle loomed large, and Nora could feel her fight intensifying as she prepared to step into the light or be consumed by the darkness of her aspirations. Nora paced the empty hallway, her footsteps reverberating like a countdown to the inevitable. The school board meeting loomed nearer, a looming presence overshadowing her thoughts. She could almost hear the clock ticking in sync with her racing heart. This was not just another meeting, it was a turning point, a chance to transcend the confines of mediocrity that had shackled her for too long. With each step, her conviction fortified, bolstered by the whisperings of folklore and legendary heroes that now thrummed through her veins. She pictured the stories capturing her students, their eyes wide with wonder rather than scanning screens. What if I could teach them more than just facts? She thought, her mind alight with possibilities. She imagined transforming her classroom into a sanctum where myth breathed life into lessons, where bravery and resilience became tangible. Yet, shadows of self-doubt flickered in the corners of her mind. What if the board dismissed her ideas yet again? Her hands trembled involuntarily, betraying her anxiety. You cannot let fear govern your voice, she told herself, shaking off the trepidation. These stories had the power to stir emotions and provoke thought something standardized tests could never encapsulate. The realization hit her with startling clarity: perhaps she was not just a teacher, perhaps she was a storyteller at heart. Determined to channel her thoughts into a cohesive presentation, she began drafting her points, aligning the lessons with educational standards, intertwining creativity and mythology into a tapestry of knowledge. Hours slipped away unnoticed, and soon, she sat before her mirror, practicing her delivery with heightened fervor. The reflection staring back at her was more than mere glass, it showcased a woman on the brink of evolution. When the day arrived, the fluorescent lights of the boardroom felt harsh yet invigorating, illuminating her resolve. The assembled board members fidgeted, engrossed in their papers, their expressions betraying indifference. She felt the weight of their gaze, and, in that moment, a seed of defiance sprouted within her. She was done shrinking into the shadows, now, she would stand tall. Her voice quivered at first, but as she presented her case, the confidence that had been building surged forth. Education isn't merely about data, it's about igniting curiosity. These stories are the backbone of culture, the compass guiding our understanding of resilience. The room was silent, the members slowly leaning in, their eyebrows furrowing in thought. Every eye that roamed away from their agenda felt like a small victory. Her passion was contagious, and it imbued her discourse with a palpable energy. Midway through, she noticed Jake observing her closely, an enigmatic expression on his face. This was their moment. The tension they had shared seemed to dissolve as he nodded slightly, encouragingly. Within her, courage edged out the blossoming self-doubt. She pushed through her nervousness, crafting powerful connections to the broader curriculum, linking mythology to scientific principles and moral lessons. Yet, as the final applause faded, she could sense a lingering skepticism in the air. The board might be receptive, but what would they ultimately decide? Was this just an opening, or would they dismiss her proposition as mere whimsy? Those clouds of uncertainty loomed again, threatening to mar the victory of her expressive tenacity. As the meeting concluded, and the board retreated for deliberation, Nora's heart pounded with anticipation. Had she made her mark? Would she finally break free of her self-imposed limitations? The uncertainty hung heavily, a tempting abyss of what-ifs swirling in her mind. Now, she walked out of the boardroom, a breath of fresh hope mingling with the residual nervous energy. But just as she was about to step into the vibrant chaos of the school, her phone pinged with a new message. Glancing at it, the words took her breath away: "We need to talk urgent. Meet me in my office." It was Jake. Why would he need to see her again after the meeting? Had her passion stirred something deeper within him, or had it sparked new tensions? Nora braced herself, her heart racing again, this time with the thrill of the unknown. What revelation awaited her in his office? A turning point, perhaps, or a deeper challenge. She felt the weight of possibility tingle along her spine as she prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The narrative of her journey was about to pivot once more, and this time, she would be the author of her fate. Nora stood outside Jake's office, the distinct hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, drowning out the chaos of students shuffling through the halls. Her heart raced, a jarring beat against the anticipation swelling within her chest. The message hung in the air between hope and anxiety, reminiscent of the very moments she had just fought to transcend. She noted the subtle changes in her breathing, a tighter grip on her resolve as she knocked, the sound reverberating with an urgency too intense to ignore. The door opened, and Jake's gaze enveloped her instantly. He stepped aside, a silent invitation that felt both welcoming and filled with unspoken tension. "Hey, thanks for coming so quickly," Jake said with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Have a seat." As Nora settled into the chair opposite him, she attempted to decipher the conflicting expressions playing across his face. Had her presentation truly resonated with him, or was there a deeper concern lurking underneath? She took a steadying breath, reminding herself that she was no longer the timid teacher who shied away from conflict. "Your presentation," he began, folding his hands together. "It was well, it shook things up around here." His eyes lit momentarily, revealing a flicker of admiration. But then, it dimmed. "But there are serious concerns from the board." The weight of his words crashed over her. "What kind of concerns?" she asked, careful to maintain her tone steady despite the dread pooling in her stomach. "Some members feel that integrating mythology might distract from core subjects. They're also worried about a lack of empirical support for your methods," he explained, pressing his hands together as if to steady the tension building between them. Nora's mind raced through the implications. She'd faced opposition before, but this was different. This time, she had ignited a spark, and to let it die would mean giving in once again. But the stories provide cultural context, they're not just fanciful tales. They teach critical thinking and moral lessons that data cannot convey. Jake leaned forward, appreciating her spirited defense but offered a sober shake of his head. "I know that, but the board needs to see tangible benefits. Something they can measure." The conversation unfolded like a chess match, each move punctuated by introspection. Nora weighed her options. Would she retreat into a defensive shell or rise to the challenge with the power of her newfound voice? "What if I gathered evidence? I could implement smaller pilot programs, collect feedback, and present clear outcomes." The slight nod from Jake spoke volumes. "That could work. It shows initiative and a willingness to adapt." He hesitated, a shadow passing over his features. "But it also might require more work than you're prepared for, especially given your current workload and the scrutiny you'll face." Nora felt the reality of his words settle heavily upon her. A part of her recoiled at the idea of increased burden, but the deeper part rooted in her conviction pushed back. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about providing her students with an enriched education, a chance to connect with their learning on a fundamental level. "Jake, it's time I prove that I'm committed. This is more than a project for me, it's a passion. If that means going beyond my comfort zone, then so be it," she asserted, feeling the latent fire within her rise. But as determination surged, a flicker of uncertainty lingered at the edge. Would she truly find the strength to defend her vision? "I admire your drive, Nora," Jake said softly, his gaze lingering. "What if we set a timeline? You can develop your pilot program and present it at the next board meeting." "Then that's what I'll do," she replied, the rush of adrenaline pushing her forward. It won't just be numbers, it'll be transformation. As she left the office, a renewed sense of purpose surged within her. But beneath that excitement lay the undeniable weight of her commitment. The path ahead felt steep, laden with all the fears she had tried to conquer. The haunting question loomed: could she truly bring her vision to life, or would she face insurmountable challenges that tested her resolve? The doubts echoed fiercely within her. Each step down the hallway reverberated with the promise of hard work ahead, but also the invigorating thrill of potential discovery. Just before she reached the classroom door, her phone buzzed again, a notification of an upcoming school board meeting. The weight of responsibility pressed down. This was more than planning, it was a quest for validation, a fight against the inertia of tradition. How would she harness her passion to solidify her vision, and what allies might emerge from the shadows, ready to stand with her? The answers awaited in the whispers of the journey that had only just begun. Nora returned to her classroom, the echo of Jake's words still ringing in her ears. The hum of fluorescent lights felt oppressive now, as if they bore witness to the weight of her ambition. She sank into her desk chair, staring out the window, unsure of where to begin. The world outside appeared vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that enveloped her. She knew she had to start small, to build something tangible to showcase the power of mythology in the curriculum. Gathering her thoughts, she grabbed a notepad and began jotting down ideas. The first step was to design a pilot program lessons that melded storytelling with critical inquiry. Perhaps she could host a series of workshops where students could engage with the myths in a way that explored their relevance today. But could she manage the workload while still keeping up with her current responsibilities? The nagging doubt loomed larger than she'd anticipated. What if she failed? What if the board saw her efforts as frivolous and dismissed them? She shook her head, rejecting the thoughts like flies buzzing around her head. This was not the time for such worries. If she was going to push through, she had to stay focused on the journey ahead. Her students filed into the classroom, their chatter filling the space with energy. As the bell rang, she threw herself into the lesson, but a restlessness tugged at her. She felt their curious glances, a reminder of the purpose she aimed to instill in them, the power of understanding their cultural heritage. Today we're going to explore some myths, she announced, attempting to mask the underlying tension. But not just any myths, ones that shape our understanding of right and wrong, heroes and villains. As she spoke, a flicker of inspiration ignited within her. The class discussed the themes of sacrifice and valor in various stories, and for the first time in a long while, she felt that spark of connection, a shared excitement over learning. After class, a few students lingered. One of them, a quiet boy named Aiden, approached her, his notebook clutched tightly in his hands. "Ms. Lawson, do you think we could write our own myths?" The question hit Nora like a bolt of lightning. Aiden's curious eyes reflected genuine interest, and she felt a warm swell of pride. "Absolutely, we can. In fact, that could be part of my pilot program," she replied, exhilaration pulsing through her. Just then, the school's guidance counselor, Lisa, stopped by. She had always been a supporter of Nora's innovative ideas. "I heard about your presentation," Lisa said. "I believe in what you're doing. Let us brainstorm together. I can help you find resources and get more faculty involved." Nora felt a rush of gratitude as the pressure eased ever so slightly. "Thank you, Lisa. I'd love that," she replied. This could be an opportunity, not just to gather support, but to foster a community around her vision, a network to amplify her efforts. Yet as days turned into weeks, an unrelenting mixture of anticipation and anxiety brewed within her. While Aiden's enthusiasm fed her resolve, doubts continued to circle. What if they poured their hearts into these myths only to face disapproval from the board? Determined to quell her frustrations, she began conducting research at the library, diving deep into both contemporary and academic writings about mythology's role in education. Each page turned revealed connections she had yet to explore. Ideas began to crystallize, and she found herself jotting down potential methodologies, infused with her students' creativity coupled with empirical support. But the pressure from the upcoming board meeting loomed larger than ever. Just as she began to feel a flicker of momentum, a plan began to take shape, and a sense of purpose blossomed. Nora realized that this was not just about defending a project, it was about creating a legacy. The night before the presentation, she gathered her materials, feeling a mix of exhilaration and dread. A sudden thought caught her off guard: what if she was reaching too far? Was she prepared to face possible rejection? Taking a deep breath, she centered herself. The real challenge wasn't just in the presentation, it was in what her heart desired to achieve. She couldn't let fear be her compass. As she closed her eyes, a firm resolution took hold. The next day would demand all of her courage and creativity, but she now realized that her strength lay not just within herself, but in the connections she forged in the hearts of her students. Of all the stories she could share, the most powerful one would be her own. The question remained, would it be enough to turn the tide in her favor, or would she find herself facing a wall of resistance when she needed allies most? Nora stood before the board members, her heart racing against the rhythmic ticking of the clock. This was the moment when all her preparation would be tested. She gripped her notes tightly, every detail meticulously arranged. The room was set up to scrutinize her, an audience poised for judgment, and she felt herself floored by the weight of their expectations. As she began her presentation, she spoke with a newfound conviction. Myths are more than stories. They shape our understanding of morality, identity, and community. They are the threads that weave our cultural fabric. Each word resonated with her as much as it did with her audience, or so she hoped. She illustrated how stories of heroism and struggle could parallel their journeys, emphasizing the lessons that transcended time. Yet, halfway through, she noticed Dr. Roberts, the board chair, leaning back in his chair with a skeptical expression etched on his face. The doubt she had fought to silence began to stir again. Could her passion resonate, or would it fizzle under their scrutiny? Nora pressed on, integrating feedback from her students' preliminary exercises. She highlighted Aiden's myth and narrative about a hero fighting against the tides of ignorance through knowledge. She watched as the board members shifted in their seats, their attention peaked. For just a moment, the spell she cast over them flickered beneath the walls of skepticism. Then, the unexpected happened. One board member, Mrs. Elmore, a veteran in education policy, spoke up. "I appreciate what you're doing, but is this really necessary in our curriculum? Aren't we just perpetuating outdated narratives?" Her words struck Nora like cold water. The challenge was out, all eyes turned back to her, searching for a glimmer of her own resolve. Nora's mind raced. She thought of the cultural richness embedded in their stories, the very essence of humanity that myths encapsulated. Taking a steadying breath, she countered, "Understanding mythology isn't about perpetuating the past, it's about engaging with it to enrich our present and future. It teaches students critical thinking, empathy, and the complexities of human experience." The tension in the room shifted slightly, but she needed more. This was not just about fending off criticisms, it was her chance to reaffirm her vision not only for her program but for her own conviction in it. She sensed the possibility of aligning her personal ambition with her professional aspirations to foster change. As the discussion progressed, she felt a profound sense of empowerment. Each question from the board became an opportunity to delve deeper into the intricacies of her research. She was not merely defending a project, she was defending the very essence of what it meant to learn, to grow, and to connect through storytelling. After what felt like an eternity, the presentation came to a close. She awaited their verdict with bated breath. Would she gain the approval she so desperately sought, or would this be another closed door? "Your proposal is unique and ambitious, Nora," Dr. Roberts finally remarked, a glimmer of interest breaking his austere demeanor. "We will consider it further. However, I encourage you to gather more student feedback and perhaps collaborate with other departments." A wave of relief washed over her as she nodded gratefully. There was room for growth. The door didn't just close, it opened a crack. It was a sign that her hard work resonated, drawing the attention of those who once seemed indifferent. As she stepped out into the hallway, her body buzzed with adrenaline. The meeting had not concluded with a definitive win, but it had sparked a flicker of possibility, something she hadn't dared to envision before. Back in her classroom, she sat with her students, who eagerly anticipated news of her presentation. Nora's voice trembled as she recounted her experience, but rather than sharing defeat, she focused on the lessons learned, the value of resilience in the face of uncertainty. The excitement in Aiden's eyes sharpened her focus. She had ignited a spark in them, one that mirrored her own. But beneath that exhilaration loomed a lingering question: could she truly gather enough momentum to transform this pilot into an integral part of the curriculum? As she prepared for the next step, the tension escalated. Would she be brave enough to push for what she believed in, even if that meant confronting naysayers? The future felt unpredictable, but Nora now understood that embarking on this journey would reveal her true self, not just as an educator, but as a storyteller woven into the fabric of her students' lives. As the bell rang, marking the end of another day, Nora resolved to secure her narrative within the educational landscape. The impending confrontations and decisions pressed on her as she carried her materials to the next classroom, where more students awaited. This was only the beginning. What came next could test her spirit in ways she hadn't yet imagined. Nora's thoughts whirled as she walked into her next classroom, the familiar buzz of anticipation electrifying the air. Her students, aware of her recent presentation, looked to her for news, their expressions a blend of eagerness and hope that mirrored her own internal conflict. Though she celebrated the small victory, the challenge ahead felt insurmountable. How could she gather the necessary feedback to enhance her proposal? She glanced at her notes, each page filled with ideas and potential collaborations swirling in her mind. This was her moment to initiate change, to reveal the hidden competencies within her students and weave mythology into their lives, making it more than just a classroom subject, but a lens through which they could view the world. "All right, everyone," she began, letting her passion surface. "Today, I want to hear your thoughts on mythology. What does it mean to you? How do you relate to the stories we've explored?" At first, the usual chatter faded into silence, and she felt the residue of her earlier anxiety creeping back. Had the board's skepticism inadvertently sown doubt among her students? But then Aiden's hand shot up, breaking the tension. "It's like having a guide for what we face today," he said, a spark in his eyes. "The heroes and lessons, they're not dead, they're real." Nora felt a wave of gratitude for Aiden's courage to speak up. "Exactly. Myths help us navigate our lives, and you all have the power to create your own." As the discussion picked up steam, students began to share their connections with various mythological tales, expressing how the themes of courage and compassion resonated with challenges they faced every day. Slowly, her pulse steadied, the room transformed into a fertile ground for ideas, each student planting seeds of creativity and insight that would shape her proposal. However, that lingering question gnawed at her. How could she harness their insights, craft a cohesive vision, and push for her proposal against the looming skepticism of the board? Nora decided on an immediate strategy. "Let's produce a project together, one that reflects our understanding of mythology through modern influences. You'll create presentations, art, videos, whatever inspires you. It can be narratives that connect these ancient stories to our lives today." The enthusiasm in the classroom was palpable. Students began brainstorming their ideas, sharing concepts for modern-day myths that paralleled their experiences. Nora stepped back, observing as her classroom morphed into a vibrant hub of creativity. This was what she had envisioned, a communal exploration of ideas, a blend of ancient wisdom and youthful energy. Yet, amid the excitement, doubts simmered beneath the surface. Could this grassroots brainstorming provide the substance needed to sway the board? Would their voices resonate with the decision-makers? As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Nora gathered her materials, poignantly aware of the stakes. She faced a choice: preserve this momentum by pushing forward, or retreat into the safety of indecision. With a renewed sense of purpose, she made her way home, contemplating how to structure her students' voices into a form that would impress the board. She recognized that to influence them, she must present not just her passion but evidence of its significance through her students' engagement. That night, as she meticulously arranged her notes, an idea flickered in her mind. What if she presented video testimonials of her students articulating their perspectives? It could showcase the impact of mythology in real time, bridging the gap between academic skepticism and cultural relevance. Yet, the more she delved into her thoughts, the more a nagging voice whispered doubts. Was the board willing to embrace such innovation? Would they appreciate the raw authenticity of her students' narratives, or would it be dismissed as mere sentimentality? As she crawled into bed, Nora felt the weight of uncertainty riding heavy on her chest. The battle ahead would not just be about proving the necessity of her program, but it would become a direct confrontation between innovation and tradition. Would she have the courage to present her students' voices as the driving force behind change? The next morning, with her heart thumping in rhythm with her ambitions, Nora knew that the time had come to face the board again. This time, she wouldn't merely represent a proposal, she would embody the very essence of storytelling. However, as she prepared, she couldn't shake the feeling that deeper challenges lay ahead once she stepped back into that boardroom. Would her message finally be heard, or would she find herself entangled in doubts all over again? Nora's heart raced as she entered the boardroom, the dull gray walls closing in around her. The board members were seated, their faces stoic, a murmur of indifference hanging in the air. She clenched her folder tightly, reminding herself of the vibrant discussions in her classroom, the untamed creativity of her students. This, she thought, was her armor against the potential barrage of skepticism. "Thank you all for having me again," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. Each word was a testimony, not just to her vision but to the lives she shared with her students. She pushed a wavering smile, willing it to reach her eyes. "Today, I want to showcase just how relevant mythology is to today's youth." Keeping her nerves at bay, Nora clicked on the first video. Aiden's face filled the screen. "Mythology helps me understand who I am and where I fit in the world," he declared, his earnestness palpable. The words struck her deeply, resonating within the silence of the room. As the video continued, snippets of her students sharing their interpretations unfolded. Each testimonial echoed the themes she had emphasized in class: identity, courage, and resilience. She felt a sense of pride swelling in her chest. They were brave, speaking truths that many barely dared to whisper. But in the boardroom, the board members remained unmoved. A few exchanged glances, others scribbled notes, but none seemed to lean in with curiosity. A flicker of doubt spiraled through her. Was she missing their language? Beyond entertainment, these stories shape moral compasses, she pressed on, her determination igniting. They invite students to reflect on the challenges they face, and ultimately guide them in forging their narratives. But self-doubt tried to anchor her. Did they care about what her students felt? Was this enough? "Yes, mythology is a reflection of our struggles, but it also prepares us for our future," she added, her voice gaining momentum. She recalled Aiden's words, how myths were guides, a critical realization in the morass of her thoughts. This thought struck a chord. It underscored her proposal's heart, providing a structure she hadn't realized she needed. As she continued, she noticed one board member's interest peaked. "Nora, how do you plan to measure the impact of this program?" His voice cut through her momentary high, resharpening her focus on the pragmatic side of her vision. "By building a portfolio system that includes student reflections and growth assessments," she replied, recalling her discussions about integrating constructive feedback into her classroom methodology. This would evolve over the year as their understanding deepens. Each student's journey becomes a testament to how mythology influences their growth. Nora could feel her confidence beginning to coalesce, the creative chaos of her students' interpretations merging with the concrete evidence of their progress. It was not just about storytelling, it was about a measurable transformation. Yet, as she wrapped up her presentation, an unsettling wave of vulnerability swept over her. Did she truly believe that integrating such narratives could outbalance the traditional metrics the board favored? Each story is a step toward understanding self-worth and empathy, crucial elements of academic and personal success, she concluded, gathering her notes. She searched their expressions, desperate for affirmation but frightened of rejection. A heavy silence blanketed the air. Just as she steeled herself against the potential letdown, the board chair leaned forward. "Nora, you're proposing a radical shift in how we approach education here. That takes courage. But can you promise us that these ideas won't just be a passing trend?" The moment stretched thin, and she held her breath. "I can promise you engagement," she replied, feeling a tremor of resolve wash over her. "This isn't just nostalgia for ancient tales, it's an opportunity for our students to become storytellers in their own right." As she walked out of the boardroom, her mind flickering with possibilities, uncertainty loomed over the horizon. Had she made her case compelling enough to transform their views? Would the pursuit of educational innovation become a reality, or was she merely grasping at shadows? With an exhale of relief mingled with trepidation, Nora knew her journey was far from done. Change never arrived easily, and she sensed deeper battles ahead. The call for yet another confrontation loomed, but this time, it would be for her right to teach the fundamental belief that stories are the threads that tie generations together. As she stepped back into the hall, she pondered her next move. How could she harness the support from students, parents, and the community to create a rallying cry for her cause? Time was ticking, and the stakes were higher than ever. Would she rise to the occasion or shrink back into the depths of insecurity? Nora paused in the hallway, the cacophony of voices swirling around her, an echo of her own conflicting thoughts. The board meeting had left her with more questions than answers, the weight of their penetrating gazes still pressing against her. What was she truly up against? The apprehension of being dismissed again gnawed at her insides. Did they really equate creativity with futility? Determined to forge ahead, she knew she had to harness the enthusiasm of her students. Their raw passion had ignited something in her that she had thought long extinguished the belief that education could transcend the constraints of a mundane curriculum. But how could she channel that energy into something tangible enough to persuade the board? Driving home, she combed through her mental archives for allies. Parents had always expressed support for her unconventional methods. They saw the transformation in their children when ancient stories breathed life into confined minds. She would need their voices, their experiences woven into her narrative. Over the next few days, Nora meticulously crafted a plan. She decided to hold a series of workshops, inviting students and parents to share their own interpretations of mythology and how it resonated in their lives. She envisioned a gathering where voices would rise in unison, united by a single thread of exploration. Each testimony would serve as irrefutable evidence, living proof that mythology was alive and necessary. Her classroom became a whirlwind of activity as she prepared. The energy between her students buzzed, they were excited to contribute, to share what these stories meant to them. During lunch breaks and after school, they met to brainstorm, embellishing old tales with personal anecdotes, breathing modern relevance into timeless narratives. As they rolled out their ideas, Nora discovered something unexpected within herself. She was not only a facilitator, she was also a storyteller. Her eyes lit with fervor as she began crafting connections between their experiences and the myths they were discussing. She realized she had a natural talent for weaving together different voices into a cohesive narrative, a skill she had dismissed as simply part of her job. However, as the momentum built, doubt still lurked beneath the surface. How would she balance the fervent desire to innovate with the board's emphasis on standardized outcomes? Could her artistic vision coexist with their yearning for structure and accountability? What if the workshops failed to capture the board's attention, their excitement falling on deaf ears? The night before the first workshop, she sat alone in her living room poring over notes, hoping to find clarity. In her heart, a spark ignited. Her students were not merely participants, they were co-creators of their educational experience. She could become a voice that advocated for them, steering their collective narrative toward tangible change. Still, the looming reality of the board meeting sat in the back of her mind like an ominous cloud. Would they recognize the value of her unconventional method? Determined to face whatever came next, she set the date for the workshop, feeling a sense of purpose solidifying within her. There was not only a potential transformation in her teaching practice at stake, there was a revolution bubbling up from her students, calling her to join the fray. As she walked away from her quiet home, a smile tugged at her lips. For the first time in a long while, she felt invigorated, her senses ablaze with purpose. She would fight for the stories that connected people, stories that could foster empathy, courage, and identity. The next morning, she stepped into her classroom, the echoes of her students' laughter resonating in her ears. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but one thing became clear: she was no longer just an educator, she was a champion of the mythic journey each student could embark upon. But just as she was about to lay the groundwork for her workshop, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Are you really going through with this?" It was Emily, an outspoken member of the board and a staunch advocate for tradition. "I hope you're prepared for the backlash." Nora took a deep breath, the thrill of confrontation surging anew. The time has come to face the myths of our own making and challenge the narratives written for us. As she prepared for battle, she thought of the legacy of her teachings. Would it withstand the test of opposition? Or would she find herself lost in the shadows of convention once more? Nora stood resolute at the helm of her classroom, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The school bell chimed, signaling the start of her workshop. Students trickled in, their faces radiant with eagerness. It was as if they carried fragments of their own stories, ready to ignite the myths that would intertwine with their lives. "Welcome, everyone!" she exclaimed, her voice steady despite the racing thoughts in her mind. "Today, we embark on a journey together, a journey of myths, of stories that reflect who we are." She glanced around the room, searching for signs of doubt but finding only anticipation. The first few moments felt dreamlike as Nora began. She opened with a classic tale, one steeped in shadows of conflict and resolution. As she narrated the story, she focused on how moments of struggle led to vast changes, connecting it instantly to the challenges her students faced in their daily lives. Her storytelling ignited an energy that radiated through the room. Yet as the discussion unfolded, she felt Emily's words seated in the back of her mind. The traditionalists would be skeptical, she knew. Would her students' enthusiasm be enough to sway the board? Her resolve faltered momentarily as she considered the stakes involved more than just her reputation, it was the future of how her students would engage with learning. Nora reminded herself of her mission. The stories weren't just folklore, they were vessels of inspiration. Casting her doubts aside, she encouraged her students to share their interpretations of the myths. Their insights flowed with surprising depth, connecting ideals of bravery and resilience to their personal narratives. The classroom transformed into a mosaic of experiences. But then, just as inspiration was at its zenith, a student named Max raised his hand hesitantly. "What if the board doesn't see this as worth our time?" he asked, vulnerability tinged in his tone. Her heart sank. His words brought back all her fears, not just the fear of rejection but the fear of what those decisions signified. "I think maybe it's about showing them why it matters," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "What if we can convey the impact of these stories in terms they can't ignore? They might not appreciate the tales, but they will feel the voices of your experiences." Reinvigorated by the prospect of turning the tension into a learning opportunity, she divided the students into groups. Each group was tasked with creating a presentation that highlighted not only the myth itself but also how it resonated in their lives. The excitement blossomed anew, spurring facial expressions that mirrored newfound purpose. They scribbled furiously, their creativity unleashed as they bridged the past with their present. Nora moved among the groups, her heart swelling with pride. They were feeding off each other's contributions, transforming their individual narratives into a collective tapestry representing resilience and growth. As the workshop reached its final moments, she sensed a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Not only had her students begun to see the relevance of their studies, but they also discovered a bit of their own potential. She felt like an architect of something greater than herself, a conduit for more than just academic achievement but personal empowerment. Yet even in this triumph, a question lingered at the back of her mind: was this enough? With the closing bell ringing, Nora gathered the students, their energy still electric. "Tomorrow, when we present to the parents, remember, your story is your power. Share it fearlessly." As they filed out, she turned to the window, staring at the horizon. Her heart was full, but a tight knot of anxiety formed. Tomorrow's presentation wasn't just about sharing, it was a confrontation with the very institution she longed to inspire. The stakes were now higher than ever, success could weaken the grip of tradition. But when she thought of the voices governed by fear that she was preparing to champion, a glimmer of hope illuminated her path. "Maybe this is what it means to truly teach," she murmured to herself. And in that quiet resolve, she realized she was ready to confront the board. Little did she know, someone was watching closely from within the shadows of the school corridors, someone who would challenge everything she had fought so hard to achieve. The day had arrived, and Nora stood before the school auditorium, its bright lights bathing her in a spotlight that felt both empowering and intimidating. The air was thick with expectation as parents, students, and faculty gathered. This was more than a presentation, it was a culmination of her journey, the embodiment of her belief in the transformative power of mythology. She could feel the weight of her ambition intertwine with the tension in the room, but she also embraced the thrill of purpose surging through her veins. As the audience settled, she glanced at the students beside her. They looked eager and ready, their faces a tapestry of expressions: nervousness, pride, and hope. This was the moment where their shared stories would act as powerful vessels to communicate a larger vision. No longer was she just a teacher, she was a guide, weaving together the strands of both ancient tales and contemporary experiences. Nora opened with a brief introduction, reminding everyone how these stories connected to the struggles and triumphs they encountered every day. Today, you will hear not just the myths, but the voices of our youth, the voices that reflect a generation yearning to connect with the past to forge their own identities. Her conviction reverberated in the room, igniting a flicker of excitement. One by one, her students took to the stage, sharing their presentations with a confidence she had nurtured through the workshop. Aidan spoke about a myth of overcoming despair through knowledge, correlating it with his own challenges of fitting into the academic landscape. The words flowed, and suddenly, it wasn't just a performance, it was a revelation. As each story unfolded, Nora's heart swelled with a mix of pride and elation. Her students spoke of resilience, courage, and identity, the very elements they had explored together in class. With every nod of approval from the audience, she felt the initial worries that had clouded her mind begin to dissipate. They were no longer mere whispers in her consciousness but voices amplified by their collective experiences. When the last student wrapped up, the applause that followed felt electric. Nora stepped forward, her pulse racing. What you just witnessed isn't merely a curriculum, it's a tapestry of who we are. Myths teach us we learn not just through data, but through stories that help us navigate our reality. Her voice carried a firmness that she had not anticipated, grounding her in a reality she had long sought. Before she could leave the stage, Emily, the board member who had previously questioned her intentions, rose with her arms crossed. There was a glimmer of skepticism in her eyes. These stories are heartwarming, but how do we measure their impact on standardized outcomes? Our focus should be on results. How do we justify such a deviation from our prescribed curriculum? Nora felt the tension thicken. The challenge hung in the air like a ripe fruit, begging to be plucked. She took a breath, channeling the resolve she'd nurtured throughout this journey. What we measure goes beyond mere grades, Emily. It's about cultivating a sense of identity and belonging, fostering critical thinking, and nurturing creativity skills our students will carry into the future. The impact of these narratives is profound, they help mold empathetic leaders, thinkers, and innovators. The room fell into a contemplative silence as her words lingered. She had begun to weave not just the narratives of her students but also a counter-narrative to the constraints that had initially held her back. As the evening progressed, the board convened privately to discuss their response. A small flicker of hope ignited within Nora, a tangible possibility that her hard-fought journey could lead to significant change. When the meeting concluded, the board chair returned to the stage and began to address the room. Nora's heart raced as she prepared herself for any outcome, a nervous energy dancing in her stomach. Today, we have witnessed an inspiring synthesis of ancient myths and modern realities. This integration of mythology has the potential to transform our curriculum. We will support a pilot program. The applause erupted again, but this time it felt like a victory, one rooted in hard work, determination, and the courage to advocate for her vision. Later, as she stood in the hallway surrounded by beaming students, parents congratulated her, their excitement infectious. She felt a swelling of pride and gratitude. She had done it. She had fought through the doubts, navigated the criticisms, and emerged victorious, a beacon of change for her students. In that moment of recognition, Nora knew she had evolved profoundly. No longer just an educator confined by fear, she had transformed into an architect of narratives, a storyteller who understood the importance of myth in shaping not only academic journeys but also the fabric of their lives. She had conquered the internal doubts that once clouded her ambitions, she had proven that her creativity could coexist with the values of education. And as she looked at her students, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. They had not just inspired each other, they had become co-authors of a legacy that would resonate for generations. With freshly ignited determination, Nora vowed to cultivate the new paths of education that invited creativity, wonder, and humanity into every classroom. She was ready to continue this journey, empowered by the knowledge that she had finally stepped into her rightful position, an unwavering advocate for the stories that connect us all. Now is the time to support this journey. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support truly makes a difference. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Nora's journey. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word.